Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of We Got Next with Anthony Fava. I'm your host, Anthony Fava. And on this show, we are going to be interviewing each week a different young Canadian in a creative industry. And this week, we got a super special guest for our first episode. Quick intro for him. He was born in Kelowna, British Columbia, and raised in Mississauga, Ontario. He graduated from Western University's Richard Ivey School of Business, where he also got his start in acting on the theater Western stage. Now a graduate of the George Brown Theater School, Jack Copland has starred in a number of productions on the stage and screen, with his most latest role being in The Whipping Boy, directed by Victor Ollie, which is now being shown on the festival circuit. But before all that, he was helping my family make tomato sauce every summer. Please welcome to the show, Jack Copland.
Well done. That was awesome.
Thank you, thank you,
It
thank you. I worked on that.
was good. No, I like that. Thank you, man.
So, Jack, welcome to the first episode of We Got Next. Just for starters, can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself? Obviously, I gave the intro, but yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, what you're up to lately, that sort of thing.
Well, I am very honored to be the first guest with my friend Anthony Fava. Um, yeah, what's going on? Just trying to stay cool. It's the middle of summer here. I don't know when people are going to listen to this. Maybe many years from now, who knows? Um, and yeah, just cleaning up my apartment. I've got my coffee here. And last night I played soccer, and so it's very difficult for me to walk today.
What position are you?
We play all over, but midfield or defense, wherever I'm needed most. I'm a team player.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I tried playing intramural soccer last school year at this point. But yeah, it was my first time playing since Timbits. Didn't go that great, didn't score any goals, but soccer's pretty fun. Can't complain. Always nice to get in touch with the European roots.
Exactly. Yeah. Get a good sweat going, and we've our record is pretty not great, but it's fun, and that's what it's all about.
Oh, that was the same with us. I think we won one game all season.
Yeah, we've gone. I think we started in tier A, and that didn't go well, and I think now we're down to like tier Q at this point, but we're still struggling, but we're still having fun.
Well, hey, tier Q, maybe there's only one place left to go but up.
Exactly. We're excited for the climb.
Oh, yes, as Miley Cyrus once said.
Shout out.
Oh yeah, big shout out. So let's get right into this little conversation here. I want to start off with just a bit of your background, like your childhood and upbringing, just kind of what's led you to where you are today, and also maybe some first acting inspirations.
Well, I mean, you alluded to it in the opening, making tomato sauce together. Well, I guess I was more in Toronto, but yeah, we grew up together, as you know, in Mississauga. I was born in BC, but we moved to Mississauga when I was really small. And yeah, I mean, we went to the same, primary school, middle school, and high school. So yeah, Mississauga, what can I say? We biked a lot. We were in the suburbs, and I think you get the imagination going when you're in the middle of the summer. You got nothing else going on. So I always liked doing impressions of people, as you know. Um, so that was just something that I like to do. I didn't mind public speaking. I didn't mind class presentations. And for me, getting into acting, I think it started when I was in grade 3. And my mom came home one day. It was Valentine's Day, actually. And she brought us all gifts. She would always get us gifts for Valentine's Day, me and my two sisters. And for me, she got me the box set of The Godfather, which is a bit of a risque gift for someone in grade 3, but she's European. So I really got into that and I watched it a lot. And I just love the movies. I know there's something magic as soon as that soundtrack starts on that dark screen, and I was just transported into this world. And I've always loved movies, um, and I would just watch it all the time, like after school. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen those movies. And after watching them, I got interested in the making of them. And I think for me, there's incredible performances in that. Diane Keaton, Robert Duvall, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, John Cazale, James Caan, and then Marlon Brando played the Godfather. And when I looked him up, I saw that when he made the movie, he wasn't actually an older man at that point. But so then my brain started working and said, well, how does that work? And then, well, he was acting, he was playing a character. So that was very interesting to me. And I just started doing more and more research. I just love the movie so much. And in terms of a movie to watch and then do research on, there's so much about acting technique and acting history in the making of that movie. So Marlon Brando studied with Stella Adler, and Stella Adler was also a contemporary of Lee Strasberg, who was in the second Godfather. And Stella and Lee Strasberg and Sandy Meisner, they were part of this group called the Group Theater, which I think in the 30s or during the Great Depression they started. And it all came from the influence or the inspiration of the Stanislavski, what's called the method or the technique, or there's a lot of different names for it. So doing that research, I was going deeper and deeper into these layers of acting. And then I think in high school, I asked my parents for the Stanislavski books. So with all that stuff was kind of cooking, and then Lee Strasberg and Sandy Meisner and Stella Adler, they taught a lot of the other actors in that movie. So Al Pacino learned from Lee Strasberg, and then he was just having scenes with him. And then, with Robert De Niro, John Cazale, Diane Keaton. So I was just really interested in that. So I was reading a lot of literature on it. But as far as I know, or like what was in my world at that time, I didn't know of a lot of theater opportunities. Like there was stuff at school that you could do. And I started doing, acting out in classes, essentially being a class clown. But then when the opportunity permitted, you could be in a play, or it wasn't really plays, but presentations, playing characters. So I know in primary school I was in a play, and I was playing a radio show announcer, and I remember waiting on the pavement outside the gymnasium, waiting for my cue, and that excitement in my belly. I remember thinking, or maybe I've thought this now, being like, uh-oh, this is really, really good. I like this a lot. And I think it's the same now, which is good. The same nerves, the same excitement. So maybe, I don't know. I feel like it's like a counseling session, but I've been chasing that ever since, Anthony. But but again, I didn't know a lot of theater opportunities. But I was just interested in movies. I was reading a lot about acting. And I was also playing a lot of sports. So a lot of my time was with school friends or sports. So there wasn't a ton of time to do other things, but this was kind of my hobby or my passion at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely like what you said there about kind of that feeling when you're on stage, almost like the butterflies, but like you just get addicted to it every time.
Yeah, it's I think for me it's you're completely present because you have nowhere else to go. So everything you just yeah. When it's and sometimes it doesn't feel great when you're on stage, if you make a mistake or whatever, but when it's there and it feels right and you're dropped in, yeah, I love it. So you just kind of look for opportunities to keep doing that, and you can feel it in other things. Like I would feel it in sports, or you feel it, at school. When you're answering questions to a test and you're just dropped in, you know exactly what you're doing. But I find for me with theater or performance, it's just there. And like you said, on stage is great, but I always find backstage before I go on, it's like one of two things. I'm really excited to go on, or I'm thinking, I can't believe I've done this to myself again. Why am I here? But that's just part of it, and I hope it doesn't go away. But I look forward to it happening again. But I also am like, yeah, it's gonna be a struggle, but it's gonna be fun too.
Yeah, there's always that feeling during show week where it's just like you said, like, why am I doing this again? Like, I just feel nervous all the time. But then, like, at the end of that last show, it's just, mwah. You almost wish you
Exactly.
could do another.
Exactly. And then you're like, let's do that again. And then you,
Yeah.
you sign up or you get cast or whatever. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah, exactly. I always get the I don't know, you probably get this too, like when a show finishes and then you just aren't with those people for like a while, and then you kind of get the like almost like a post show, like I don't want to say depression, but like you almost get that feeling where it's like your purpose is kind of gone that you were doing for the past months.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I definitely feel that. And I have this actor mentor and I talked to him about that. Like when you finish a show and he's like, yeah, it's definitely a real thing. You just got to treat yourself, um, have a bath and kind of come down off that wave of adrenaline, um, and excitement. And like you said, when you're rehearsing a play, you also get to know the people you're rehearsing with so much because there's not a lot of plays that are about like non-extreme emotional things. So then you might see them on the street like 3 weeks later and you're like, hey, I feel like, you know, we were we had a child together and a marriage and all these things and we lived through great loss and joy. And it's like, oh yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. So it's a strange thing.
Yeah, and I guess going off of that, I wanted to kind of get into where you really got your first acting start, which was on the stage at Western, doing plays with Theater Western. So could you just touch on that, like your first play there versus the one you went out on? I believe it was 12 Angry Men was your last one there.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, playing a lot of sports, but I had this like secret passion for Stanislavski and Stella Adler and reading acting books. And then when I went to high school, I found out they did have a theater program, or they had a show essentially. So it wasn't until grade 12. So grade 12, I was finally like, okay, you know what? I'm going to audition for this. Let's see how it goes. There was a strike at that time, so it almost went away. But the students actually put the show together themselves. Like we would go to the public library and we would rehearse. So I went on stage. I don't really remember what happened, but again, I loved it. And then when I went to Western, up until this point, again, I'm reading a lot. I'm reading a lot of biographies of actors that I like, and a lot of them, especially the American ones, they would start in theater when they got to college, or there would be theater clubs, that kind of thing. So I didn't really know. I'm sure I could have Googled it, but that's not as interesting a story. But then I got to Western and they had a clubs week. So I went in and I was like, I feel like there should be a theater club or something like that here. So there was a booth, Theater Western, and it was kind of how I had envisioned it in my mind. Patrick, who was running Theater Western at the time, super nice. Yeah, you can come sign in, get ready to audition. And I auditioned, and the first play that we did was Boeing Boeing, which was a like a door slam farce, which was a lot of fun. But I had to learn really quickly. But yeah, I remember Patrick saying, "Yeah, you can come audition," and I was lucky enough I got cast, and I had to learn fast. And I remember learning not very efficiently, just doing a ton of stuff to try to figure out what I had to do. And it went well. I loved it. Theater Western is a great organization. I remember we performed at the McManus Theater, which is like a great theater within the Grand Theater in downtown London. So it was an amazing experience. And as you know, everyone's doing it because they just want to do it. Like no one's getting paid. It's just for the love of doing it, which is a great education. And I remember though my first review at that time. I remember my first review at that time. Well, we got like a good review for the whole cast, and again, I was reading these books like don't read the reviews, et cetera, et cetera. Like I don't do that, but of course I'm like insecure, and I'm like, yeah, I want to see what they say. So we got like a pretty good review, And then somebody said, "Oh, did you see the second review?" I was like, "Second review?" And I looked at my sister because my older sister, who's at Western at the time, she actually worked on the production in the crew, and she did a lot of the set design and painted some stuff for the set. And I looked at her, and I could tell that she had read the review but had withheld it from me. So then I
Mhm.
really wanted to read the review, and I think it said Jack Copeland does a bad impression of a Muppet or something like that. Like it was really awful. Like it was like the worst case scenario, but it was fine. It all it all went well, and then it was just about learning after that. So we did Boeing, and then we did Play It Again, Sam, and then we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then yeah, in fourth year we did 12 Angry Men. And in that time, Theater Western also has a short play festival where I was able to be in some short plays written by students, new works, um, and also was able to write and direct something that I had written. So it was just a great club to keep me out of trouble as much as possible, and just yeah, explore what kind of things I wanted to work on and explore my technique. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, well, as someone who saw Boeing, I personally did not think you sounded like a Muppet, so I just want to put that out there. Also, shout out Theater Western, great group, now known as Theater USC. But yeah, great group there at Western. Great plays, was part of it too. Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
But I did want to kind of ask you about those plays at Theater Western. Was there one like performance or maybe just a memory that really sticks out to you as like, yeah, that was a good time there at Western?
That's a good question. Because there's so many, right? Like every production is just a new team. Like I said, everybody's there because they love doing it. They want to do it. Um, the memories are often the cast parties. Um, which I don't have a lot of recollection of, but it was just like a lot of fun of letting off some stress after that, like climbing that mountain. Um, I think for me, like a special moment was when we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And then I think our opening, it was like there was a light snowfall. It was just a beautiful night. We found out that we were sold out. And then we found out on that day that the movie itself was released on that day. Like it was some anniversary, like the 40th anniversary. So it was all these kind of forces happening at once. And I just remember that opening night being a really special night because we worked so hard on that. Um, but yeah, in terms of one memory, I'll try to think. I mean, the Muppet one I've tried to shut out of my memory, but I remember my first performance. I'm super nervous for Boeing, and there was a guy in the crowd. We started off. It's a door farce comedy. There's a guy in the crowd, and he's wearing a mask. So everyone's kind of like, so we were making jokes, but everyone in the audience kind of like, what's going on? And then the guy starts laughing when there's no jokes. So somebody comes in and goes like, "Hey, how's your day going?" And then there's this one guy, dead center, going ha ha ha, and well, I mean, it was really uncomfortable, but at the same time, all my nerves kind of went away because it was just uh yeah, all my nerves went away because it was just such a strange experience. And then we were able to have fun on stage. It wasn't just I wasn't so focused on me. I was just more in the room with everybody else and focused on trying to get them to follow the story. So I was able to kind of get out of my head a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah. Was there ever any explanation for why that guy was laughing like that?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I know that he was. I think he was escorted out. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, that was. I mean, as like a first play performance, that was pretty memorable.
yeah, no, that's definitely a cool one. Um, Going off of Western though, you then went to the George Brown Theater School, which was kind of your first like real theater school experience. So, like, how was that experience for you? Like, just working with actors in that space, and also just starring in plays through that program, and also like outside that program, was Theater on the Ridge a part of the program, or was that a separate thing you did?
Yeah, so when I graduated from Western, again, I'm reading these acting books, and some of them's talked about going to theater school. Um, And so I met with a couple family friends. I mean, I had one family friend actually from Kelowna, or from people that we knew in Kelowna. And I talked to them. I said, I don't know, should I just start working? Should I start auditioning? Because, I had this experience from Theater Western, or should I go to theater school and kind of learn more? And that was always secretly what I wanted to do. He said ultimately, it's whatever you think. And I would reference all these things in the biographies. Like, this person said, you don't need it. This person said, like, I loved it. And he said, well, that's their journey. So, but yeah, when I started at George Brown, now you're with a group of students. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody auditioned to get into the program. And yeah, it was a really interesting learning curve. But I had read these books about technique and things like that. I'd taken a couple of classes, but then you get really into the details. So, movement. We have a whole movement class, and how can you move efficiently? How can you tell a story through movement? You have a voice class. How can you unlock your voice so that you can play all these different characters? So I would say during my theater school experience, it was really about compiling a list of tools, like in a toolbox, so that when you're finished theater school, if someone comes up to you and says, hey, can you do a British accent? You say, yeah, I have experience doing that. Hey, can you do a waltz? I go, yeah, I have some experience doing that. So you're kind of just a sponge for 3 years, just picking up all this stuff. And then, like you said, in third year, you put on these amazing shows with great directors, a lot of them from Toronto. And that's another thing that kind of can springboard you when you finish school, is that you already have contacts. You're working with people who are working in the industry. So it's just another level in your progression. And then in terms of Theater on the Ridge, Theater on the Ridge is a separate company that works in Port Perry, but its artistic director, Carrie, who's amazing. Her son was at George Brown in the year above me, and I think for years she had come to George Brown. They have scene study classes, so she'd come to the scene studies, which were open for people to come watch, and she would kind of see who to bring to the Theater on the Ridge that summer, because she would have these great repertory summer theater contracts. So in my time with Theater on the Ridge, I think I did like 4 plays. So you're basically putting up one play while you're rehearsing the second play, and then when you put that one up, you're rehearsing the third play. So it's just an amazing experience just to be on stage in rehearsal kind of every day, which was awesome, in Port Perry in the summer. So
Yeah. And I'm gonna touch on Theater on the Ridge again later on, but I did want to ask you about when you were done at George Brown. Like, did you face a lot of struggles immediately after school, just finding work in the industry? I know a lot of up and coming actors, like, they can't find work a lot in their first few months or years even. So, like, how was your experience with that?
well, my experience, and everyone else that I graduated with, we were in shows for our final season. And that's kind of where you invite agents and invite people from the industry, say, hey, look at me, this is what I can do, do you want to work with me? And our final 2 shows, and the way it works, because everybody has to feature one of the productions, so that they can get a good, people can get a good impression of them. One of the shows, the last shows, was kind of the one where I was given a larger chunk as like a feature. And then we were in rehearsals for that. I think we did a week of rehearsals, and we came in on March 13th. Now this is 2020. So I don't know if you know anything about 2020, but it was a very interesting year. And we came in March 13th, Friday the 13th. And they told us and I think on the Monday we heard, okay, so there's a pandemic happening. And I remember talking with Sasha at the time, and Sasha was saying, do you think everything will get shut down? And in my mind, I'm like, no, I don't know. We'll see. And then Friday we get called in and they say, okay, there's a pandemic. You have to go home. And at that time we thought, oh, maybe it'll be 2 weeks. Maybe we'll be able to come back a little bit. But essentially our year was done. So then graduating into a pandemic, into COVID world, everything shut down. Theaters, like live performance, just didn't happen. So in a way, it was not great. I mean, it obviously wasn't great, but at the same time, the whole industry was shut down. Like nobody was could do anything. So there was a lot of stuff going on, that you had to focus on. It gave me time to kind of get my materials in order, reach out to some people, have some coffee chats. At the beginning, I did some background work on film and TV sets, and that was a cool experience because you're on these massive, big budget shows, and you're seeing how it's done, and you're seeing, Jason Momoa doing his uh, stage combat practicing, and so that was a really cool experience. Taking classes online, um, yeah, Zoom theater, just basically doing whatever you can, but it's so tough without that live audience aspect. So it was difficult at the beginning to get representation because agencies can kind of give you access to productions that you might not otherwise have access to. But at that time, they were kind of just closing the books because they're already worried about getting enough work for the people in their roster. So yeah, it was strange, and I can't believe it's what year is it? 2023. Can't believe
Yep,
that was
2023.
can't believe that was 3 years ago. So yeah, it was definitely difficult at first, but again, the whole world was kind of in that boat, so I couldn't be like, why me? So yeah, it was strange for sure.
Yeah, obviously it's hard to tell if COVID's really done at this point, but near the end of COVID, quote unquote, in 2021, you actually starred in a Canadian classic. I want to touch on this. Murdoch Mysteries. You were in the episode Brother, Can You Spare a Crime? I watched it. Amazing episode, awesome stuff. Can you just talk about working on a Canadian classic like that? Like maybe even the pressure of like taking on a role in such a classic show in Canada, and also working with Murdoch Mysteries legend Yannick Bisson.
Yes, it's surreal. It's totally surreal. So when I graduated theater school, I actually got into voice acting first because that was something I had a microphone at home and I could get into that. So I was lucky enough to find representation through that. And then I talked to my agent and said, hey, are there any agents that do like principal on screen acting that might be looking for people? I was lucky to find my amazing agent, Amy, and my voice agent, Jason. They helped me out a ton during that time. And then I was auditioning, and then, yeah, a role for Murdoch Mysteries. And then when you get the call, like, okay, yeah, you're gonna be on Murdoch. It's just surreal. You're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. Um, I just remember going to the studio. It was like one day. You have like one day, and and it's the way it happens in film often. It's like we're gonna do the highest emotional scenes first, and I'm basically faking at this point. Like I've done I've done films, indie projects, because again, that's kind of how you learn, and you're building up experience, and you're building up a demo reel. But the first time when you're on a set like that, you see the teams of people, of like talented, skilled people that move very quickly. You just got to come ready and correct. So I just prepared a ton. I remember sitting in my trailer, which was amazing. I remember taking a photo of the door with my name on it, and I just remember listening to music to get me into the scene because it was like a heavy scene. So I was like, just had Beethoven, like, and then I was just imagining the people walking by my dressing room being like, "What's going on with that guy?" Like, I think the lights were off. Um, but then you get called to set, and things happen very quickly. And it's almost good that it happens very quickly because I didn't have time to get in my head. So I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, sounds good. Yeah, no, I know how to do that for sure. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. It's a super small world acting too. So once you start talking to the other actors, oh, you went to George Brown, do you know this person? And then you start feeling like, oh, okay, I'm part of this community. And then yeah, obviously when Yannick comes in, I've seen that guy on TV. Like I've watched that guy on TV, and now a big shout out to your hockey news article in terms of working with somebody that and now you're suddenly in a scene with them. It's like, all right, let's go. But he was just amazing to watch. I mean, he learns so much dialogue, intense dialogue. Like he has to know all the, like, okay, so then this person came here and this person came here, this person came here, and he has to be on top of it all. He's got to kind of come off as that like Sherlock character that's all knowing sometimes. And but he was just offset. He was just super chill, and we were just sitting in like lawn chairs waiting to go into the set, and I was just asking him questions, and he was just talking about stuff outside of acting. I asked him how he memorized his lines. He had like a certain system for that, where he would memorize like the first letters. So and then it kind of comes off naturally. And I remember doing the scene with him, and it was a very emotional scene. I won't give away any spoilers, but sometimes you have people standing in, right? Where, when they're not on camera, somebody else will come stand in, or you're, and I'm used to that with self tapes. You're just talking to the camera or just a wall essentially. But he stayed, and I had to give him this monologue. And as I'm giving him this monologue or this, part of the episode, he's staying there, he's looking at me, his eyes are starting to water, which making me upset. So he was giving me a lot to get through that. So it was an amazing experience, working with that team that have been doing it for 15, 16 seasons. So it's just like a well-oiled machine. And it was incredible, when I was a background actor, to watch it, and then to be and be a part of it, but then to be on camera in a principal role was really special.
Yeah, well, you also got my parents addicted to Murdoch Mysteries after that episode because they watched that episode, and I swear for the next 5 months, that was all I heard on TV was Murdoch Mysteries. So thank you for that. But yeah,
You're
no,
very
great
well.
episode, great job on that. I was a proud friend at the time. It was awesome.
Thank you, man.
And actually, speaking of Canadian classics, this one's more of a Canadian classic for my generation, for my childhood. That's kind of made a comeback now, and you've been part of that. Total Drama Island. You played Wayne, the hockey bro. Can you
Absolutely.
just talk to me a bit about that role and just your voice acting experience? I know you've touched on it a bit, and also, you have a hockey background as well. How did that come into play, playing the character of Wayne?
These are great questions, Anthony.
Oh,
I just
please,
got to
please.
say that. I just got to say that. You've done your research. Yeah, with Wayne and Total Drama, like I said, I was doing some voice auditions, and then this one came in for Total Drama, and I remember Total Drama on TV too. And yeah, the character was Wayne. I think the breakdown was pretty straightforward. He's just hockey bro, and I played hockey since I was 5 years old, um, until I was, graduated high school essentially, and still play like pickup and things like that. So I read the character and I was like, wow, no, I know this guy. Um, like I've played hockey with this guy. Like I've been in the dressing room with this guy. So when I did the audition, the way it works typically is you send in a voice tape, and you kind of just send it out into the ether, and you might hear back, you might not hear back. But this particular time, they said, okay, we want to hear you again, but now we'll have a Zoom call with you, and we'll do, we can give you redirects and things like that. So even, his wardrobe, like he's wearing a hockey jersey, he's got like a baseball cap. I had like the same baseball cap. I wore my first ever hockey jersey from, and I basically told them like, I know this guy, and it went well. And they said, yeah, we want to bring you in. And yeah, Wayne is just an amazing character to play. And I was lucky enough, um, to Wayne has a buddy, Raj. So it's Wayne and Raj typically. And I was able to meet Varun, who's also in the show, and Varun was amazing to work with. So we'd be in the booth together, and we'd be making each other laugh. I mean, the scripts are so good, so that's a gift. Like you're basically working with great writing, the great animators, and yeah, I get to just show up and have fun. And it's kind of ridiculous, to be totally honest.
Yeah, no, actually this morning before our interview, I looked up your character on YouTube because I'd seen a bit of Wayne in Total Drama Island, but obviously, I watched it like way back when it was in its like first season. But yeah, I was watching, they had a whole compilation of just like best Wayne and Raj moments, and it was crazy because I kept hearing Wayne, and I'm like, this doesn't sound like Jack. Like this just sounds like every hockey guy I've ever known in like high school and stuff. It was awesome.
Yeah, there's just something, like we're speaking as we do now, but I feel like as soon as I go into a hockey arena and I feel that cold air, it's sort of like, oh yeah, bud, let's go. So that's Wayne, and that's also the training at George Brown in terms of voice. You could do a bunch of different things, which is what's fun about voice acting is you can be an ogre one scene, you can be a bear, you can be a hockey bro, and the entire time you're wearing your sweatpants, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no. Do you have any more voice acting work that you have like lined up or anything planned for the future for that?
Hopefully, I mean, you submit, you do auditions. One of my first voice acting things that actually secured my representation, my first voice representation, was a commercial PS or a PSA about COVID-19, and I think the description was just like total jerk or something like that. I was like, well, I know that guy too. I am that guy. But it was like somebody that wasn't taking the pandemic seriously, and and then there's sounds of the ICU in the background growing. So my aunt's calling me. She was at like the hairdresser listening to the radio, and she was like, "That's my nephew." Um, so it's a lot of submissions for commercials, PSAs, audiobooks, and then animation series. And yeah, hopefully you secure something. But right now, Total Drama um, is the focus.
Yeah, well, it's a great focus. Awesome Canadian show there. Huge part of my childhood. I remember every day me and my friends at Lauren Park Public School, we'd show up and we'd talk about the latest episode and who got eliminated. It was like our version of Survivor, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And then that was an interesting thing too. They basically had a meeting and they said, "You're going to get the script, and every time somebody like Survivor gets voted off, so as the actor, you get the script and you would read the script because you're a professional, but you're kind of secretly skimming to the back page and to see like, have I been voted off? So every week you'd get the email, and then I would kind of go on and be like, I'm back, or I'm alive, or whatever. So yeah.
uh, So, just jumping back to the theater side of things, one really cool play you did, and one that's just really impactful and has a lot of history, is Three Ordinary Men, which you did with Cahoots Theater, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just touch on what it was like playing those characters? For those that don't know, Jack played a part in this play. It's about three men, three voter registration workers who were murdered in the United States way back in the day. Could you just touch on? I actually did a project about that, so I do know a bit about it. It's been a while since I've researched it though, but can you just tell us a bit about, I guess, both the story behind the play and what it was like bringing a real character to life on stage, and how to do that with with respect for the person, I guess.
Yeah, Three Ordinary Men is an incredible story written by Stephen Elliott Jackson and Tanisha Tate directed. She's also the artistic director of Cahoots Theater. And myself, along with Jamar and Tristan, we played three real life civil rights activists that went down to Mississippi. Um, oh my gosh, I'm hoping I got the location right. It's been a while. But they go down to the South essentially to register Black voters to vote and to teach them their rights. Um, and in the course of doing that, I think the first day when they go down there, they get tailed by the local police, brought in for questioning. They haven't done anything wrong, and held till dark. And when they leave, they get tailed by members of the white community with connections to the Ku Klux Klan, and then they're murdered. Yeah. So what made the story so resonant at the time were that two of these men were from the North. They were white, and it kind of made the nation go, "Wait, what? What's happening down in the South? You mean someone's getting killed just for doing what is their constitutional right?" And people are like, "Yeah." And then one of the many tragedies of this story when they're searching for the bodies, because it became a national story, a national search, they found a number of Black bodies in the search that had been murdered and not sought, not looked for. And it really awakened the consciousness in America at that time. So it's actually the subject of the investigation is the subject of the movie Mississippi Burning. So obviously this is a very important story to tell. And I was playing a character named Andrew Goodman, who, like you said, existed and was one of those three men. So you do a ton of research of the period, of what's going on at that time. But I was really interested, yeah, in playing this person that exists. So I was doing research into Andy, and there's the Andrew Goodman Foundation, which everybody should check out, which is about access to voting, and many, many other things. And they had some archives on Andy on the website. So I was able to see, his handwriting, things that he wrote, stories that he wrote, articles that he wrote. And then there was actually a permission slip, because when he was going down, he was, I think, 20 years old. So he needed permission from his parents to join this movement of Freedom Summer. And he had to list some emergency contacts. And two of the emergency contacts were lawyers, maybe family lawyers, but one of them was a friend. And I looked up the friend, and he was still alive. And he was an academic at a college near New York. So I kind of hummed and hawed for a while, and I was like, I'd love to talk with the guy, but I obviously know that this is a sensitive issue. But looking at the work that he'd done, the social activism that he'd done, I suspected maybe this is a story that he's talked about or would want to talk about. So I sent him an email to his academic address, and then within a day he gets back and says, yeah, do you want to do a Zoom call? So we get on the Zoom call. He's got the faces of Andy behind him, and we had an amazing conversation. And he actually said, because of the pandemic, so he went to high school with Andy, and him and a lot of his high school classmates that also went to school with Andy, they connected during the pandemic, and they'd have Zoom conversations. So he said, I can put you in touch with some people. So I said, okay, this is amazing. Now, during this experience, I'm learning my lines. I'm doing what I would usually do, but it's just making me understand that this was a real human being, which was a great learning experience for me. And I try to bring that to every role now, that this is a real human being. This was somebody that, had people that loved them, that had dreams. Like Andy was a full three-dimensional human being. And so I was able to meet with a couple of his other high school classmates. And one of them actually moved to Toronto. So I had a full coffee conversation looking at somebody who looked at Andy. And it just kind of dropped it in even more of how real this was. Because I think, you think about the 60s, you go like, oh, that was so long ago. And it's like, no, it wasn't. And Andy theoretically could still be here today. So it really heightened the so many things in that process. And then he said that, and in the play itself, Andy talks about having a girlfriend, Ruth. And he said, Ruth actually lives in Toronto. I'm like, my mind is just like, what? And unfortunately, she had Alzheimer's at the time, but her husband agreed to come to the play. And so I'm telling this to Tristan and Jamar, who I was acting with, and we all had our own processes. And I talked to Tanisha about it, and they were like, okay, just don't let us know when they're going to come to the show, because it's just that extra level of pressure, and just realness. And it's a really tragic story too, so it can really affect you emotionally. And so he came to the play, and he actually brought a sweater that Andy had given to Ruth. And so we're holding that, and it just destroyed you. But it also, every time that the three of us went on, yeah, we were nervous, but we were more focused on telling this story and getting the audience to understand the importance of this story, because it was important to these three guys. And that was an amazing learning experience for me. And again, every time I do a play now or a project, why are we telling this? Why is this important to an audience? So it's not just about me and my performance, it's about telling a story. about real human beings. So yeah, that was an incredible experience.
Oh yeah, no, it's when it's a story like that, and like you said, a true story for that matter, and especially with family members of the guys showing up to your play, that it becomes bigger than theater at that point.
Exactly. It's not just a. It's not. I mean, it's not just a play, I guess. But I mean, maybe now it's becoming what a play is supposed to be. Yeah.
I definitely think it's cool though that their story still gets to be told, and not the unfortunate end of these people, but like the important work that they did more so.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the three of us we got to learn more about the effect that this story had in terms of the foundations and the laws that were passed, but it was also a sobering reminder of how prevalent that is today in terms of voter suppression, in terms of racism, in terms of just hate and what lengths people are willing to go uh, to serve that. Um, so you need stories like this because there's also heartwarming moments. There's also comedic moments to show the humanity and the goodness, and that these three guys they perished and they didn't know what was going to come out of it. And we're telling the story almost to them, saying like, a lot is coming out of this, and you're inspiring people to be better. Yeah.
No, that's really awesome, and I want to kind of shift the I guess the mood a bit, and also just shift to
Yeah.
some more of your theater work. Something you did more recently that I got to see was Romeo and Juliet. That was an awesome performance. Also the theater you guys were in for that was really cool. I don't know if I've ever been in a theater quite like that. I remember I used some theater jargon to sound all snobby to my dad. I turned to him and I said, "Oh yeah, we in the biz call this an intimate space."
Exactly. Yeah, it was beautiful theaters at Randolph Theater, at Bathurst and Bloor. And yeah, we did Romeo and Juliet. And I'd never done a full length Shakespeare before. When you're in theater school, you do a lot of monologues, scene studies. And even before that, too, again, I'm reading these books. They're saying, you should have some Shakespeare um, understanding or things in your repertoire. But to work on a full length Shakespeare was incredible. I mean, it's just such a and to talk about Three Ordinary Men too. You're talking about real themes too. You're talking about human beings again, and it was great to talk and say, well, what does this mean in our day and age? What do we want people to, not necessarily we're teaching them anything, but how is this relevant to our world now? And through our conversations, there was many things that were relevant. But one thing about Romeo and Juliet, in terms of the making of it, was I was cast as the understudy. So in the biz, as they say, that's when you basically step in when the main actor, if something happens, if they get sick or injured or whatever, the understudy learns all the parts, learns all the fights, et cetera, and then can step in and do the show. And this particular company, Sunbeam Theater, which is an amazing company, big shout out, they want to give young artists an opportunity basically to practice their craft, to work on great plays. So part of that was they said, with the understudies, you guys are doing a lot of work. You should have one performance where you can go up no matter what, even if nothing happens with the main cast, which is what happened. So we had one kick at the can. So our opening night was our closing night, and we're doing the whole thing. And I remember, when the main actor would practice his fights, and now it's like the day of, and I'm coming in and I'm practicing my fights with everybody else. And we had rehearsed up to that point, but obviously when you get into show mode, you're kind of focused mainly on the main cast. So then, yeah, basically have one kick at the can to do the entire Romeo and Juliet, and in the other cycle when I'm playing some of the supporting characters, I would do my scene, I'd come off, I'd have like a chocolate bar, have a coffee, and I'd see the main Romeo running around, getting his costume and doing all this stuff. And then when I was doing it, I remember coming into the dressing room, doing a quick change, and seeing him sitting there. I'm like, man, this is tiring. He's like, yeah, I know. But I mean, to ride that wave that Shakespeare makes for you, is just was incredible. It was a great experience for me. So I hope to do more Shakespeare in the future.
Yeah, and one other thing with Shakespeare especially is, the language can often be sort of hard for obviously memorization just because it's not the kind of English we're used to speaking nowadays. But also it can be kind of hard to make it's still interesting for your average audience. So I noticed when you guys performed it, you had a lot of like good humorous bits thrown in there, and they didn't seem like out of place. Like it didn't seem like you kind of just took a random line and thought, "Oh, I could make this sound humorous." It felt like you really knew where the humor was in Shakespeare's writing. So can you just talk to me about how you interwove like those humorous bits into, I guess, a very dramatic play and a tragedy at that?
Yeah, again, great question, Anthony. Yeah, the I mean, a lot of the humorous bits are in there, and Shakespeare, like great writers, they know when an impactful, heavy moment's coming up, and then they'll maybe throw in a joke just before that. So then you, as an audience, you open up and you go, ha ha, you open up, and then they like, they stick you, and while you're open, so it drops down even more. So a lot of that is in the writing. I mean, the director Megan gave us a lot of leeway to try stuff. So Lucas, who played Mercutio, he was he every time he'd come in with new things, and a lot of it, again, the writing is so specific and so rich in terms of the different words that you can use, the consonants, the syllables, that you can add physical gestures. There's so many things that you can do because the writing is so varied and changes. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the language itself, sometimes it can be hard to follow when you go see a show. And I'm learning more and more. But when you see a great actor, like for me, when I go to Stratford and you see like a Lucy Peacock or a Diego Matamoros, you follow everything, and you don't know how they're doing it. They're speaking the same as you would if you were in the play, but they've figured it out. And there's some great videos online. I suspect it's if you really understand the images and what you're saying. If you just say it, it's this weird thing where the audience just gets it. But if you don't fully know what you're saying, because it's a lot of work to do the definitions, figure out exactly what the script says. If you don't fully know, then the audience isn't going to fully know either. So these people have just done, and they make it look easy, which is like the hardest thing to do. But yeah, it's a super funny play until someone gets murdered, which is pretty classic. And then it quickly unravels into a tragedy, with the forces of the stars and the social strife between the families and everything like that. And again, he opens you up to that where you believe in love and you're laughing, and then suddenly boom, 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 and then you go, "How could this happen?" And then he's like, "Yeah, that's the point." So
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned like the family dynamic and the family conflict, and I remember reading the program for that showing of Romeo and Juliet, and I remember it was really cool because I noticed during the play, people weren't necessarily dressed in Shakespearean attire or anything. Like some people were wearing Hawaiian shirts, but there were still swords being used. So I was kind of wondering, like, oh, like what time period is this set in? Like it looks like today by the clothes, but they're using swords. So I kind of looked at the program, and it mentioned that like family conflict and children essentially killing themselves over family conflict is still something that's super prevalent today even. So it's like a really timeless story. So I thought that was really cool because they kind of mentioned there that they wanted it to seem like it could have been in the past and it could have been today. It could be any time period really. So like how was that working in that sense? Like not necessarily being full Shakespearean, but not necessarily having a time period you're set in either. Did that make it difficult at all or
that's a good question. I think the when you're doing like a full-on period piece, there's all these different things that come with that, where the costume is informing how you move. Like, are you doing it? You know, I remember doing scene studies. We had a thing at George Brown called period studies. So you would study a period in history. So maybe it's like the Restoration period. We did ancient Greek theater. And then you really do a deep dive into that. So, like, how would they speak? How would they carry themselves? What was the technique at that time? This kind of gives you more freedom because you're yourself. It's like contemporary, but at the same time, you're holding a sword, and holding a sword there's certain techniques with that, and so yeah, it was difficult, but at the same time, that was set out on the first day. I remember them saying, this is happening at all time, or it could be a specific time, whatever reference point gets to you, so that I guess we can get to the core of the story and maybe not focus too much on the specific, costumes or movements or style. Um, so yeah, it was interesting, and people can also bring some flavor to it too, like those comedic moments, like you said, like for someone like Mercutio, if he was wearing a particular wardrobe that at that time would represent his character, it might not resonate with current audiences. So like if he was wearing yellow stockings, everyone would be like, oh, okay. But at that time, maybe that would be like, oh my gosh, he's wearing yellow stockings. But if he wears a Hawaiian shirt, we kind of know that reference. We're like, okay, I kind of know what this guy's about. And again, it's affecting how he moves. And it works for the character. So I think that was kind of the thing, like whatever works, use it. And yeah, it gave you a ton of freedom, and yeah, it made the whole thing very, very fun.
Yeah, no, I definitely got that with Mercutio wearing the Hawaiian shirt the whole time. I almost got like a Chad vibe.
Exactly, because we kind of know who that person is. Like we have a reference to that. Whereas we might not if we use a period example, but then the audience has a certain feeling about them, and we know that too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then now I'm going to jump from the stage to the screen. You've done a
Oh,
lot of work with one specific director I want to touch on, Victor Ollie. I think it started off with The Pink Rabbit, which was a short film you did. Was that earlier than 2020, if I'm
I think it
correct?
was 2019. Yeah.
2019, yeah. And then from there, I want to jump into what you currently did with him. But can you just touch on The Pink Rabbit? Like, what was that like? Was that one of your first short film experiences, or at least at that level?
Yeah, so I think when I was starting acting, there's a lot of opportunity that you can find, local theaters, community theaters, or in my example, like student theaters. But film is can be tough because you need, it's a lot of people that are working on it, like specialized people. Like with theater, you need a stage and actors, and not even a place for an audience to sit. But film, there's so many moving parts. So when I was at Western, I did some of the student shorts at Fanshawe College, which was down the road, which was great experience. But I actually worked with Victor and Ben. Ben is the writer of the team, and Victor is the filmmaker. And I mean, they do everything, like producing, making everything happen. So Ben and I went to middle school together, and we even went to the same piano school. And as I was getting into acting, probably in grade 12, when I was doing that play, I don't know, him and I were talking. He was like, "Oh, I know this guy Victor, and he's a great filmmaker." So I was like, "Okay, great." He's like, "Do you want to be in this project?" I was like, "Sure." So I was all excited. I was like, "This is my big break, like I'm gonna be. This Oscar season's coming up. Like this is it." And so we made it a short together at Victor's house, and one of the main actors in it, in the first weekend where we filmed, he had a big mustache. In the second week, we showed up to film, and he had shaved off the mustache because he had to go to like a wedding. So then Victor was like, "Man, none of the footage is going to match what we just filmed last weekend." He was like, "Nah, I know, I'm sorry." So basically, the project was wrapped. I took it very personal, but it was my first experience with continuity. But it was also, I got to meet and work with Victor and Ben, um, which was amazing. I mean, we're two or three guys from Mississauga. We kind of have similar backgrounds, and just a love for movies. So then when they were making Pink Rabbit, they said, "We want you to be in this," which is like the actor's dream. Like for somebody to reach out and say, "Hey, we wrote something. We were thinking about you. You should be in it." So then I was, super excited to do that. And then it was essentially a two-hander between me and another actor, David John Phillips. And David John Phillips is a great actor on screen and theater. In theater, he's worked in New York, he's worked in the States, he's worked, in Toronto. So that was an amazing experience to work with him, and Ben and Victor again. And yeah, I'm trying to think if something that happened with Pink Rabbit that was out of the ordinary, but it was just a lot of fun. But then that kind of got the ball rolling in terms of our trio of director, writer, actor, and then we reconnected for the Whipping Boy, as you mentioned, and that was an interesting one because when we first made Pink Rabbit, I wasn't part of the actors union, but then when we made Whipping Boy, now I'm part of ACTRA because I want my dental benefits. But it makes the cost way more. Like there's a lot more things that they have to do, and to their credit, and also Natasha, our producer, they got everything done, and they did all the certification, they did all the paperwork, the immense amount of paperwork to make that happen. And it's funny because we were back using Victor's house as kind of like the set. It's an amazing house for this, so it's like, we're still making movies at Victor's house, but there's just more money involved, and so that the Whipping Boy, and we also made a short called Colored Emotions at that time because Victor works with this great cinematographer Tobias, who also worked on Pink Rabbit. So while Tobias was here, because he lives in Denmark, they wanted to make as many things as possible. So we were supposed to make another short, and at that time I had like a family thing, like a loss in the family, so I couldn't film it. And I was like, I'm just really sorry, guys. We're supposed to film on the weekend. And they said, okay, well, what if we film on Thursday? And I was like, yeah, but it's Tuesday today. And they were like, yeah, it's okay. So that night they wrote something, and then I had all Wednesday to memorize it. And it was just monologue after monologue after monologue. But I was just so happy to be working with these guys again and for the opportunity. So we made that short, Colored Emotions, Whipping Boy, and Pink Rabbit. And a couple weeks ago, we had a premiere of all three at the Royal Cinema in Little Italy in Toronto. So it was just amazing. And then to see the support from Mississauga, and to see everything on the big screen, it was pretty special.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And just about the Whipping Boy, could you just give us like a little brief synopsis about what it's about? Because I've seen a couple, clips here and there, but obviously I haven't been able to watch the whole thing yet. So for people listening, what is the Whipping Boy about? Because it's a very interesting title, and I saw it has a very medieval aesthetic to it.
Right. I don't know. I feel like I should make it like enticing, Like, do you love intrigue? Do you love stories of love and loss? Come see the Whipping Boy. Um, Essentially, it's based on a historical practice where if the prince makes a mistake, rather than punishing the prince because you're hitting the royal, like you can't do that. They had what was called a whipping boy. So it was somebody that would be sometimes the prince's friend. So if the prince spilt his coffee, the whipping boy would get whipped as a way to stop the prince from making mistakes. So yes, it's very medieval and very, very awful. But that said, in the making of the story, kind of like we were talking about with Shakespeare, there's a lot of really funny comedic moments to kind of highlight the absurdity of this whole thing with a modern lens. But then we also, what does this practice mean? What's at the root of it? And why might this still be relevant now? So,
Mm. Yeah, no, it never ceases to amaze me some of the stuff that went on in medieval times, just some of the logic that was going on in people's heads.
yeah, I just saw a great Fringe show called Fatal Charade with some George Brown graduates in it. And it was about ancient Rome. So in ancient Rome, if somebody was sentenced to death, one of the punishments was to act in a play whereby at the end, when the character dies, the actual person dies. So it's like, yeah. So it's a very just sadistic, sick, like how much time did you have on your hand to like organize this? Um, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I like to read books about different time periods, but like the medieval, it's heavy stuff, man.
Well, it's definitely a good thing you're not acting in that time period than that you were born now, because at least we get to see many more of your performances to come.
Yes, very grateful. Yes.
So I just want to kind of in general. all your performances, obviously, it might be hard to pick one so far that really stands out, but do you have a performance that you've done so far that you're just like, oh, that's the one so far? Like, obviously, there's more to come, but so far, is there one that really sticks out as your best one, or just your personal favorite for any reason?
To be honest, I think everything I do is pretty amazing. Um,
I love the
no,
humbleness there.
yeah, I'm a pretty humble guy, so um, no, it's really difficult to choose. Obviously, I think Romeo and Juliet, just because it's so fresh in my mind, I think it's whatever your last one is, or whatever your next one's going to be. Um, so, I mean, every single one is special to me in terms of learning about acting, learning about life, meeting incredible people. Um, so I think working on, just freshest in my mind, working on a full length Shakespeare and that language and just working with great writing, it makes you better as an actor and hopefully as a human being, but who knows about that. So, and then, as I think it's McConaughey said, like, it's all about the next one.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he says that as he drives away in his Lincoln.
Exactly. Exactly. Shout out to Lincoln. Shout
Oh
out to
yeah.
Theodore and shout out to Miley. We got a lot of shout outs going.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, big shout out, big shout out. So the next part I kind of wanted to jump into, obviously we've heard your story, but one of the main things I wanted to do with this show is not just to tell, you know, the stories of people who are currently in the creative industries, but to, maybe inspire some people to create their own story in a creative industry, and in this case, acting. So one question I had for you, the audition, that's a huge part of acting. You can't get a role without auditioning first. You can't get into theater school without auditioning first. So, for maybe a young aspiring actor listening, or just someone who's thinking of maybe dipping their toe into theater for the first time, like, do you have any main keys to nailing your audition?
Yeah, I think for me, I do. And I think it goes back to that conversation I had with that family friend when I was thinking about getting into acting and theater school. It's whatever works for you. So for me, what helps a lot, obviously, know your part. If you can read the whole play or the whole screenplay, which is not always possible, but if you can, that's really essential to know your part within the story, what's going on, what kind of flavor you got to bring to that scene. Um, Also, if it's for film and TV, some great advice I've gotten is to watch the show. So, know what kind of world you're in. Because if I come in with a total drama energy, but it's Murdoch, it's like, what's going on with this guy? But, who knows, it might work. Um, it's obviously nerve wracking. It depends. If you do self tapes, you're at home, you're not in front of people. I think the biggest thing, again, I learned in theater school is to breathe, make sure that you're breathing. Typically, when I start forgetting lines or making mistakes, I check in and go, well, I haven't breathed in a while. Um, so, yeah, know your part, know what you're auditioning for, do your work. And then the final thing was from an interview with Bryan Cranston that I picked up along the way. The more that you can go into it as a way to practice, as a way to learn and not kind of treat it as the final form, that it can feel like that you're there to show what you can do and you should be happy with it. Then it also makes if you don't get the part that you have that internal validation that like I'm proud of what I did. I learned from that, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just going to make you're just learning and for future auditions. Um, yeah, because it is tough. It is really tough. It's essentially like a job interview every week. Um, but yeah, you just learn by doing, breathe, be kind to yourself. And these are all things I say, but I don't necessarily do.
Okay, well, I mean, that's okay. We all do that sometimes, but it's all good. So the next thing I kind of had though, we touched on what it's like in those first months and years after, you get out of theater school. So I wanted to ask you if you had any messages or advice or steps to success for people in their like early years of their acting career? I know you're still technically in your earlier years of your career, but I was just wondering if you have any advice, seeing as you have seen a lot of success so far.
Thanks, man. Um, what helped me a lot was I talked with a lot of older actors. Like I have a mentor, Conrad Coates, and that's one piece of advice is just to talk with people. I find people, like you asking me to do this, they want to talk about their story and what helped them, if they can be helpful. Um, so that's one thing, and get as much information as you can. It's also for me, what I'm working on is, what do you want to do? There's so many different things that you can do. Let's say for acting, do you want to get into musicals? Do you want to get into theater? Do you want to get into indie theater? Do you want to get onto, the Mervish stage? Do you want to do blockbuster films? Do you want to do voiceover? Do you want to do audiobooks? There's a lot of different things that you can do, so you kind of wear a lot of hats. You want to do all of it. So the more you know of, like, what do I like, what do I want to work on, you can focus your efforts more efficiently. um and then the other thing too is that's helped me is managing my finances, because essentially you don't know when your revenue is going to come in. um at the beginning of the year, unless you've booked a play or something like that, you don't know. So the more that you can, and I met with an accountant, and he said, like, essentially you're running your own business. So you need enough cash to float you for those downtimes. And he said, like, ideally, yeah, cash moolah, and ideally you should have like 12 months of cash flow just to cover yourself, which is a lot. So that's why, a lot of actors, they work other jobs. But the more that you can put money away, maybe 10% off of each paycheck from whatever job it is, you'll slowly start building that nest egg that'll give you that freedom between gigs. Um, yeah, in terms of other advice, things that have helped me is just keep learning, keep meeting with people, like I said, coffee chats, but also taking classes. Classes can be expensive, but if you can find, an inexpensive thing that works for you, that keeps you sharp, that's also going to be helpful. And I think for me, the thing that I had to learn is that it's a marathon. And I think it's the same for a lot of people when they graduate school, because school is so fast paced. Like, we got an assignment in 2 weeks, and then now you're on to the next grade, and then you're on to this, and then you're doing the internship. But then once you get out into, after school, it's long-term play. And a lot of things, might take years to get you to that point, or things could happen very quickly, and then who knows. So um I have just a routine that I follow that to kind of keep me sane. So I just try to exercise, spend time with my family, remember that I'm also just a, not just, but I'm a human being, and there's a lot of important aspects of my life, and trying to find that balance in a business that is difficult to find a balance in. um yeah.
Oh, very interesting. And yeah, and similar to that, um,
Oh,
a lot of people might even just be scared to get into the industry in general. It is, I guess you could say, a little bit of a risky industry to get into. There's a lot of unknowns of like when you're going to get paid, if you're even going to find work. So I guess someone who's in the industry now and, like I said, has seen success, what would you tell someone who might be a little bit afraid to dip their toe into the acting industry?
I think for me, in terms of this conversation, I was dipping my toe for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there was moments where I was like, I want to just, walk out and say, I'm an actor, kind of like Michael Scott, like I declare bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
But like they say in that show, it's like nothing's gonna happen. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that you got to do, so you can slowly build up materials. So for me, I did a play, and I was like, I kind of like that. And then I did another play, and I was like, I really like that. Okay, so actors need headshots. Okay, I'll get headshots. You know what I mean? Um, and then you slowly build it up. It can take a long time, or some people it happens right away. And yeah, it doesn't have to be an overnight thing. And the other thing too is that if you work, like I was working jobs when I was in school, or summer jobs in university, and I would find time on the weekend to take a class or act in a student film, those kinds of things. And then but again, you have to love it, because you basically say like, I'm going to either give up some sleep or some of my free time to try this or to do this. But if you love it and you enjoy it, you'll continue to find opportunities to do it. And yeah, it's all about finding that balance. Because again, if I go like, all right, I'm ready to work, and it's like, okay, well, this might take a couple of years. Um, so it's more about yeah, it's a marathon, um, and slowly build up things, and talk to people and get advice. It's kind of like anything, but if you want to do it, like you'll find a way. And be kind to yourself in terms of knowing what you can handle, what you can't handle. And if you're going to do it, make sure you listen to your gut in terms of, is this something I want to do? Is this a project I want to work on? Because yeah, life ideally is long.
No, I think that's a great message because obviously, it's a very like there's a lot of people that do theater and then go into something else, like myself, and there's a lot of people that really commit to it, and I've seen a couple people, like yourself, really take that talent and go far with it. So I think that's a good message for people that may be wanting to take that extra step instead of just maybe simply doing like, oh, I'll do a play here and there, like actually like this is my job kind of thing.
Yeah, again, it's up to the person and what they want to do. And for me, I think I kind of need it. Like, I go kind of a bit loopy when I haven't done a project in a while. But I worked with young people's theater, another shout out. During the pandemic, I volunteered with their student camps. And at the end of the day, too, like, it just teaches you great communication skills. It teaches you, it's also like a team environment, a team bonding thing. Like, these are all things, a lot of the things that I learned in sports have helped me in theater, and things that have helped me in theater have helped me in other arenas. But it's the work itself for me. If you love the work itself, you'll find opportunities to do it. The business side of things, you kind of just got to put up with, or you got to find your way through that. But once you've done all the auditions and the thing, but when you're on set or when you're on stage and you're doing it, then it's like, that's what it's all about.
No, definitely. That's great, man. And we're actually gonna change things up a bit. We got a couple questions left here, but this
Ooh.
part's my favorite part. This is gonna be a regular part of the show. We're gonna do 5 rapid fire questions that I have created here for you. So, Jack, are you ready for these?
No, sorry. Was that the first question or no?
No, that does not count. The next
Okay.
one will be the first question.
Okay, I'm just slowing you down. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so first question, you may have touched on this, but favorite movie?
The Godfather.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, question number 2, theater production you haven't done yet but want to.
Death of a Salesman.
Ooh, that's my go-to monologue right there for any production. Biff's monologue, great one for all you actors at home. Take my humble advice, I guess.
Why am I holding this pen in the staircase? So good.
Yeah, it's great. And you throw in like a New York, Brooklyn accent. Oh man, they'll give you the part every time.
Big shout out Timothy Chalamet. I saw him do that in a movie, but if you're listening, Timothy, it was great. You can
Yeah,
check
big
it
shout
out.
out to the Wait, go ahead. What was that?
You can check it out on YouTube. Anybody's curious. It's a great monologue.
Actually, I think I watched his version of that before I did my own. Because shout out Theater Western, I did that thing 2 years in a row and got parts in the play. So that was a good little monologue. Did me a lot of
Just
good.
use that monologue, you get booked. That's essentially our lesson here.
Exactly. You follow my advice, not the actual actors. You're gonna get the part.
I endorse you completely.
Thank you. So number 3, I think we're on. Yes, number 3. Greatest acting performance, stage or screen, in your opinion? Just like any actor, greatest acting performance in your opinion.
The first thing that came to mind was literally just Denzel Washington. I can't even think of a
Classic.
performance. Yeah, in terms of an like a specific performance, oh, that's so tough. That's so tough. Oh, I mean Daniel Day-Lewis in the Name of the Father, really fantastic. Uh, oh, that's really tough. Oh,
I'd
yeah.
also accept maybe like a top three.
Top three. Okay. All right. Okay. 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 Um, I'm just thinking of performers. Like I'm just thinking of Viola Davis, Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep. Um, but in terms of an actual performance, yeah, I think Daniel Day-Lewis in either My Left Foot or In the Name of the Father. Um, uh, Denzel Washington in anything, and uh, hmm, I'm thinking of just John Cazale. His performance of Fredo in The Godfather is pretty special.
Yeah, that's a classic right there. Love Fredo. Well, I don't know if I love Fredo, but his performance very good.
Breaks your heart. You broke my heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
broke my heart, Fredo. After he kisses him, interesting. But all
Spoiler
right,
alert.
let's. What was that?
No, I'm just joking. If people haven't seen The Godfathers yet, maybe they will now.
Yeah, no. Well, they definitely should. At least the first two. The third one, well,
Yeah, we don't have to get into
yeah.
it.
The first two though, chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, we're actually gonna go off that, and the next question was about The Godfather. Favorite Godfather quote? So many to choose from, but what is the personal favorite? What's the one that you like the best?
Anthony, man, these tough. It's supposed to be rapid fire, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It can be like a
uh,
moderately paced fire.
yeah, okay, cool. We're stoking it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
there's a scene where Michael is confronting Frank Pantangeli in the
Oh,
second one, and Frank's like, Mike, what's going on? And then Frank's or Michael goes like, somebody shot at my house. And then Al Pacino snaps, and you don't see Al Pacino in a lot of the Godfather movies, at least, kind of do that Al Pacino performance that we kind of got used to, where he's like, "Whoa," But in this one, he snaps on Frank Pantangeli, and I haven't seen anything like that other than when he's in the hotel room with Kay, and he also loses it. But he just says, "In my home, where my wife sleeps," and he just loses it. And I remember being like, it's one of those moments where, like, you're eating popcorn, you sit there like jaw open. You're like, what's gonna happen? So I think that's probably one.
That's crazy though. I didn't think about that. How yeah, we do see Al Pacino in these big roles, always going like "hoo-wah" and stuff like
Yeah,
that. But yeah, no, in The Godfather, he's more I don't know if I want to say like reserved, but especially in the first one, like near the beginning, he's such a quiet guy, and then comes this mafia boss. It's
yeah.
a
I mean,
crazy arc for him for sure.
I mean, I read a lot of books about it, and you can see interviews, and he wasn't even supposed to, or Francis Ford Coppola wanted to cast. This is going to just be the Godfather fan podcast. We can do this every week. Um, but Francis Ford Coppola wanted him in the movie, but the producers weren't convinced. He wasn't that big of a name. So apparently, when they were doing the early filming, he was like, "I think I'm going to get replaced at any moment." But he said something interesting that I've thought about. He said, like, at the beginning, I didn't really know exactly what was going on, so I just kind of did nothing, which is really tough to do. So you kind of see them in the first scenes. He's just going through the motions, and it works because you have no idea for the massive character journey this person's about to go on. Yeah, there's so many great quotes. There's also when Lee Strasberg, the late Lee Strasberg, said like somebody gives him like a piece of cake, and he just goes smaller piece. And I've always loved that scene. It's just like because there's all these story elements where you're like, what is he referring to? Is it like a poetic thing, or does he just want a smaller piece of cake? And it's just so funny to see this like mob boss go like, no, actually, smaller piece.
Oh goodness. And it's rare you would hear an Italian person asking for a smaller portion. Just coming from an Italian background myself, we love our big portions of spaghetti, tiramisu. So that definitely you got to look deeper into that. Like, why was he asking for that smaller piece? Like you said,
There's many layers to this, many layers.
like a lasagna, man.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, so
Uh,
the last rapid fire question, I think this is actually about your second favorite movie, if I remember correctly. I want to know your favorite Space Jam quote. I know that was always one of your
oh,
favorite movies growing up.
oh, that's so good. Yeah, so it's basically The Godfather and Space Jam. Those are the two on the Mount Rushmore of films. In terms of, I mean, there's Bill Murray in that one. There's also Larry Bird. They have some really funny repartee on the golf course. Oh, it's the funniest one is when, spoiler alert, when Michael Jordan gets sucked through the golf hole to go to Looney Tune Land, and then Wayne Knight, who plays Newman on Seinfeld, Wayne Knight basically digs a crater in the golf course because he's responsible for Michael Jordan's safety. He builds a crater in the golf course, digging, trying to find him. A huge amount of dirt, massive hole, and it's on a golf course. This other golfer comes up and goes, "What are you doing?" And Wayne Knight says, "I'm fixing a divot." And then the golfer turns around and screams to the other people he's golfing with, "He's fixing a divot." So I think yeah, the director of that, I think he also made Ghostbusters. So the comedy in that movie is just so good. And then the other one, I had the Michael Jordan action figure. And he presses the button and he says, "Let's play some basketball." So
Oh, that's a classic. I remember that when he's accepting the challenge of the Monstars, and he says that was always a classic moment. Did you see the new Space Jam? I was meaning to ask.
I haven't. I must admit. I'm here to admit on air I have not seen the new Space Jam, but I'm scared because it's something that I love and I don't want anything to happen to it. So I haven't watched it yet. Maybe I will one day. We'll see.
Yeah, as someone who has seen it, I think twice. It has its good moments. I don't think it holds up to the original though.
There's just something about it. There's something about, I think that was like one of the first uses of that technology, just to see Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, you know, swapping dialogue. That was pretty special at that time. And then, yeah, I mean, there's so many things to that movie.
Yeah,
It's just
and it
mad.
was just such an interesting combination of things too, because we'd seen, cartoons and humans coming together and things like Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right.
Um, I guess I don't know if Looney Tunes Back in Action, if you remember that movie, was before Space Jam or after, but yeah, no, it was just very odd to see like the best basketball player in the world just playing basketball with Bugs Bunny on the screen. Like it took me until I was older and I realized like, I always watched this movie. It's kind of a weird concept though.
Can you imagine pitching that? And it's also like the it's also like tied in with Michael Jordan's story of when he retired and he played baseball. Like it's mixing real world with movie world with cartoon world. And yeah, can you imagine pitching that? I mean, they probably just go for it. Like, all right, Michael Jordan, Bugs Bunny. And they're like, okay, sold. How much money you want? But they did it. They did a great job with it too.
Yeah, like I remember growing up and obviously being a huge basketball fan myself. Like that was my introduction to Michael Jordan, was seeing him playing with Bugs Bunny on my TV. Like it was just crazy that that movie even got made, and now that there's a sequel with now the best player today, it just shows like the legacy, I guess. The new movie's called A New Legacy, so I guess that means something. But yeah, it's cool to see that it's kind of evolved, even if it may not be as good as the original, I guess.
I wonder if this will be like a Bond situation where like, do you think people at the NBA draft now are like, maybe I'm next in line for the next Space Jam?
Yeah, you never know. Victor Wembanyama, he's a big name right now in the NBA. So, if maybe he's the next LeBron, we could see him lacing them up with Bugs Bunny in the future. Maybe even some other cartoon characters. You never know.
Whoa, whoa, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse? No, no.
I don't know if
Maybe.
Disney would allow that.
Yeah, I don't know if Mickey and Bugs get along, but yeah, if Victor plays his cards right, he could be in the next Space Jam along
Or
with
at
me.
least a villain, anyways.
Yeah, who? Yeah, exactly. There's, but that was so funny about the first one too. They had like all the other NBA players, like Charles Barkley, and they were good. I mean, they were also like good actors too. Like they did a good job. And Michael did a good job too. Like, can you imagine? He's probably acting along with like with tennis balls that are going to get CGI'd in afterwards. Um, but yeah, he was my introduction too, and he was a real life superhero. Like it was larger than life. Yeah.
Oh no, definitely. So Jack, that was the rapid fire, but now, I want to let you tell us what you got going on right now. You've touched on it a bit, but what do you got going on in your life, your career, anything that we should look out for in the future?
Well, just auditioning, man. Just doing that grind. And I've also been writing. So again, my mentor was like, one thing you can do is you can create your own work. So I write for an hour a day. I've written a couple screenplays, written a Hallmark script, written a couple shorts. Hopefully, I'll be teaming up with Victor and Ben again on something soon, maybe a feature. Um, and actually, breaking news of this morning, a theater company that I've worked with, or a theater director I've worked with, was like, "Hey Jack, I'm working on the show. Somebody just got sick. Do you think you can come in?" Essentially, it'd be 1 week of rehearsals, and then we perform the week after. So fingers crossed for that. We'll see what happens. But yeah, just same old, and just looking forward to talking with you again. That's basically it.
Oh, well, Jack, always great talking to you, man. And thanks for coming on my first episode here today. I'm really excited to get this show going. I'm hoping that maybe, it lasts longer than just the 4 episodes I have planned for, the purposes of my project. But yeah, like thanks so much for being on this first episode. It's great talking to someone who has just so much experience in acting, a field that I'm also just really interested in, that I've been a part of too through theater. So yeah, it's really nice talking to you, and also just seeing how far you've come from like us making tomato sauce together in my nana's driveway growing up to you being on my TV with Murdoch.
Thanks, man. I mean, it's just always good talking with you. Like, we go obviously way back, and it's my honor and my privilege to be, a guest on this. And yeah, I mean, as much as we talk about industry and stuff like that, there is an element of us. There's still those kids that were squashing tomatoes in the driveway and waiting for the food afterwards. So yeah, it's just always a pleasure.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, we'll have to get the tomato sauce going again someday. I'm trying to bring that tradition back eventually.
Yeah, maybe they can sponsor the podcast, or we can do like giveaways. You know what I mean? Like and
Oh,
subscribe for a jar.
oh, that'd be good. That'd be good. Because yeah, I remember, there was always a lot of like tomato sauce that, didn't get used or something, or like it would take a while to use up all them, It'd be nice to give back to the community in a sense.
Or give it to your guests.
That's also, that's a good idea. Oh man, that could entice people to come on the show more. That would be great.
Exactly.
I mean, who's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
turn
yeah.
down homemade tomato sauce?
I don't want to meet whoever is going to turn that down.
Yeah, this is one of the most Italian conversations I've had in a while. I love it. I love it. But
No, pleasure.
anyways, Jack, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you. Everyone watching or listening, thank you so much for tuning into this first episode. You're the best for making it this far. I will see you guys next Friday for another great episode of We Got Next with Anthony Fava, where I will interview another young Canadian in a creative industry. So stay tuned for that, and peace.
Peace.